Good afternoon, everyone. You all are welcome to this webinar, which is a crash course on NEET Biology 18 to 23rd June 2020. I am Kiran Kurhade, Assistant Professor in Botany in RK University. Today's topic is photosynthesis in higher plants. To begin with, this is the picture where you see a rainbow. Now, the question over here arises is that how can sunlight, seen here as a spectrum of colors in a rainbow, powers the synthesis of organic compound? Yes, the answer is simple, and that's photosynthesis, right? Now, what does photosynthesis means? Now, we know that photos means light and synthesis means putting together. So, photosynthesis is an anabolic process where organic compounds like carbohydrates are manufactured in a chlorophyll-containing cells. Those are chloroplasts, using carbon dioxide and water as a raw material with the help of sunlight as the prime source of energy, producing oxygen as the byproduct. Now, basically, photosynthesis is converting light energy to chemical energy, and it is essentially the only mechanism of energy input in the living world. This webinar deals with the historical events in photosynthesis, the role of light in photosynthesis, the structure of photosynthetic apparatus, and the process that begins with the excitation of chlorophyll by light and culminates in the synthesis of ATP and NADP heads. Now, to begin with, the historical events. In 1968, it was Van Helmont who said that an increase in organic substances comes from water. To prove this, he had grown a willow tree and he said that the tree has gained weight, but the soil lost 2 ounces of its original weight. Next, in 1727, it was Stephen Hales, he is also known as the father of plant physiology, said that the plants obtain nourishment from air and light. So this was by this time the role of light in the photosynthesis was confirmed. Then in 1772, Joseph Priestley, via performing different experiments with candle, mice, and mint plant, he concluded that the vegetation purifies the air. Next, based on his work, Jan Egginghaus in 1779 confirmed Priestley's experiment, and he said that the oxygen released by the plant is possible only during light and that to the green tissues of the plant. Next, in 1783, it was Lavoisier who said that the purifying gas, which according to Priestley was phlogiston, is produced only during sunlight and it's oxygen. And noxious gas, which according to Priestley was dephlogiston, which is produced during the burning of candle, is nothing but carbon dioxide. Next, in 1827, it was de Trochat who explained the importance of chlorophyll in photosynthesis. Next, in 1845, it was von Meyer who said that the green plants use solar energy or they trap the solar energy and converts it to the chemical energy of organic matter. Next, by 1845, by Liebig, it was confirmed that the organic matter of plants, these are derived from the carbon dioxide. That is the fixation of carbon dioxide to carbohydrates. Next, in 1854, it was Julius Van Schaas who discovered that green plants synthesize glucose and they store this glucose in the form of starch. Now, the green substance, which is the chlorophyll, is located in a special structure called chloroplast. Next, in 1888, it was T.W. Engelmann who plotted the action spectrum, post-action spectrum of photosynthesis. Now, next, in 1905, it was Blackman who proposed to be law of limiting factor, one of the important questions from NEET point of view. Next, in 1941, it was Ribon and Kamen who, based on the work performed by Neil, they said that the oxygen evolved from water and not from carbon dioxide. And to prove this, they have used radioactive oxygen 18. Next, in 1954, it was Melvin Canville who used the radioactive carbon dioxide 14, and he traced the path of carbon in the dark phase of photosynthesis, that is the C3 cycle. Next, in 1932, it was Emerson and Arlen who, by their flashing light experiment, said that there is an existence of light and dark reaction during the photosynthesis process. Next, in 1937, it was R. Hill who explained photolysis with the help of isolated chloroplast and electron acceptor in the presence of light. Next, coming on to the nature of light, the very question which I have asked you beginning of this session, that was how the spectrum of color seen in rainbow powers the synthesis of organic substances. Now, we all know that the sun is the prime source of sunlight, which is used as the energy to power the process of photosynthesis. Now, this sunlight has got the dual nature, that is wave-like and particle-like nature. Now, the particles or the photons, these are the smallest unit of light, and they oscillate along a path which is measured as wavelength, as you can see in the diagram. Next, the light emitted from the suns contain photons in a wide spectrum of wavelength, and these are called as photoelectromagnetic spectrum. As you can see over here in the picture, the wavelength may range from 10 to the power minus 3 to 10 power 15. Lesser the wavelength, greater the frequency and greater the energy according to Planck's equation. Right now, the photosynthetic organisms use only a small portion of this electromagnetic spectrum, which is called as the visible light. Now, this is the PAR region, that is the photosynthetically active region, which ranges from 400 to 700 nanometers. Next, now how come these photosynthetic organisms, basically plants, they trap the light energy? Now, to do so, they have pigments. Now, these pigments facilitates the capture of wavelength of light in the visible light range only. Now these pigments, they have the ability to absorb light at different wavelengths. Now, the color of the pigment basically comes from the wavelength of light that has been reflected by it. Chlorophyll A is the main photosynthetic pigment in all organisms except bacteria. Now, to explain the third point, that is the color of the pigment comes from the wavelength of light reflected, this diagram will help. Now, we know that the leaves appear green mostly, right? So why do leaves look green? So the reason is that when the visible light falls on the leaf, red and blue light is absorbed by the leaf and the green light is reflected by the leaves, and this reaches our eyes and hence we are able to see leaves as green. Now, coming on to absorption spectrum and action spectrum. Absorption spectrum was first plotted by T.W. Engelmann in 1888, which we have already seen earlier during the historical events of photosynthesis. Now, what does this absorption spectrum and action spectrum actually does? Now, we know that the chloroplast pigments, they are responsible for absorption of light, right? Now, particular pigments, they absorb light of particular wavelengths only. For example, if we take chlorophyll A, absorbs only blue and red light in visible spectrum. Now, the amount of light absorbed by the pigment can be plotted, and this graphical representation of absorption spectrum against the wavelength is called as absorption spectrum. As you can see it over here, the absorption spectrum plotted in yellow, where you can see the absorption spectrum plotted for chlorophyll A, beta carotenoids, and chlorophyll B. The absorption spectrum of chlorophyll A widely ranges in the light red and blue light, right? And so this from this graph, it is very clear that most of the photosynthesis takes place only in the blue and red region of the spectrum. Next, going on to action spectrum. Now, the pigments absorb light of specific wavelength, and these are very necessary for the generation of oxygen. Now, the photosynthesis takes place in the visible light ranging from 400 to 700 nanometer of wavelength. We know that, right? Now, it does not take place at same rate with other wavelength. So only a specific wavelength works for photosynthesis to take place, right? The rate of photosynthesis at different wavelength is measured and plotted by the amount of action, that is the amount of oxygen evolved and the amount of carbon dioxide consumed. Now, this graphical representation of rate of photosynthesis against wavelength is called as action spectrums. Now, so here in the diagram, you can see the absorption and action spectrum as well. Now this is the T.W. Engelmann in 1882. As said earlier, he described the first action spectrum of photosynthesis. To do so, he used a microspectrophotometer, which was a prism, and then with the help of it, he split the sunlight into its spectrum components, that's the Webber, and then he illuminated green algae, which was Cladophora and not the Spirogyra, which was placed in a suspension of bacteria, aerobic bacteria. Now, these bacteria were used to detect the sites of oxygen evolution. Now, these bacteria accumulated mainly in the region of blue and red light of the split spectrum. It resembles roughly the absorption spectra of chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. Now, going on to the photosynthetic pigments. There are basically three types of photosynthetic pigments. We know what photosynthetic pigments are. These are the pigments which absorbs light of different wavelength in the visible light region only, and they are responsible for the process of photosynthesis. Right now, there are basically three main types of photosynthetic pigments. Those are chlorophyll, carotenoids, phycobilins. Now, chlorophyll. The term chlorophyll was coined by Perry Joseph Pelletier and Joseph Benjamin. Now, basically, the chlorophylls, these are green in color. They are water-soluble pigments of different types. To name a few of them, chlorophyll A, this is the universal pigment present in almost all the plants. They are bluish in color and they dissolve in petroleum ether, with the molecular formula being C55H72O5N4 Mg. Next is the chlorophyll B. It is present in all higher plants. These are olive green in color and dissolve in 90% methyl alcohol. The molecular formula being C55H70O6N4 and Mg. Next is the chlorophyll C. These are present in diatoms, dinoflagellates, brown algae. The chemical formula being C35H32O5N4 Mg. Now, chlorophyll E is the rarest of all chlorophyll and it can be seen in Bowkerelia, which is yellow in color. Bacteriochlorophyll, these are the chlorophylls which can be seen in bacteria. Next, carotenoids. These are commonly called as tetraterpenes. They absorb blue and violet lights. Next, they are also known as shield pigments. Why? Because they protect the chlorophyll from photooxidation. They are usually yellow-orange pigments, and for their formation, there is no need of light. Next, ripening of fruits, floral colors, leaf color change during the autumn is mainly due to the carotenoids, that are keratin and xanthophylls. And the general formula being the H40 and H56. Now, chlorophyll B, C, D, E, along with xanthophyll carotenoids, these are called as the accessory pigments. Now, these accessory pigments, they absorb the energy which the chlorophyll A cannot absorb. Okay, now, indeed, they not only enable a wide range of wavelength of incoming light to be utilized for photosynthesis, but they also protect chlorophyll A from photooxidation. Now, the site of photosynthesis, which is nothing but the chloroplast. Electron micrograph of a section of chloroplast is, you can see it over here, which consists of the outer membrane, inner membrane, stroma lamina, stroma, grana, thylakoids, etc. Now, to begin with, chloroplast, what is a chloroplast? It is the site of the photosynthesis in plants. These chloroplasts are present in the mesophyll cells of the leaf, and this chloroplast contains the chlorophyll, right? This is the basic thing which we all know right now. All green parts of the plants, including the green stem, unripened fruits, they all have the chloroplast. But the leaves are the major site of photosynthesis in most of the plants. Now, there are about 500,000 of chloroplasts per square millimeter of leaf surface. Now, chloroplasts are found in higher plants and they are generally biconcave and planoconvex shape. Chloroplast, as said earlier, they are found mainly in in the cells of the mesophyll, the tissue which is interior to the leaf. Now, a typical mesophyll cells have about 30 to 40 chloroplasts. So we can say 30 to 40 chloroplasts per mesophyll cells, and each organelle measures about 2 to 4 micrometer by 4 to 7 micrometer. Now, in algae, a single huge chloroplast is seen that appears as a network, a spiral band, or a stellate plate. The color of the leaf is from chlorophyll, the green pigment located within the chloroplast. It is the light energy absorbed by the chlorophyll that drives the synthesis of organic molecules in the chloroplast. So basically the function of the chloroplast is for the synthesis of organic molecule. Next, going on to the parts of chloroplast. This is the basic structure of chloroplast. As you can see, you can see the outer membrane and the inner membrane as well. Now, to begin with the outer membrane, it is the semi-porous membrane and is permeable to small molecules and ions. The outer membrane, this is not permeable. It does not permit any large protein to come inside the chloroplast. Going on to the intermembrane, it is usually a thin intermembrane space of about 10 to 20 nanometers, and it is present between the outer and the inner membrane of the chloroplast. Now, inner membrane of the chloroplast. Now, this inner membrane of chloroplast, it forms the border to the stroma. Stroma is nothing but the liquid present inside the chloroplast. Now, it regulates passage of molecules in and out of the chloroplast. The addition of regulation activity, the fatty acid, lipids and carotenoids are synthesized in the inner chloroplast membrane. So this is also the function of inner membrane. Going on to the stroma, it is an alkaline aqueous fluid which is protein rich and is present within the inner membrane of the chloroplast. Stroma is the site for light independent reaction that takes place, which is the dark reaction. Now, stroma usually contains the chloroplast DNA, chloroplast ribosomes, carboxylation enzyme rubisco, and phosphoenol pyruvate carboxylase enzyme. Along with it, magnesium, chlorine, and manganese are also present in the stroma. Going on to the thylakoid system, which consists of grana, right? The thylakoid system, it is suspended in the stroma, right? As you can see in the diagram, it is purely suspended in the stroma. The thylakoid system, it is a collection of membranous sacs called thylakoids. Now, the chlorophyll is found in this thylakoids, and it is the site for the process of light reaction of the photosynthesis to happen, right? The thylakoids are arranged in stacks, which are known as the grana, which we know that these are the sites of light reaction. To be more precise, a chlorophyll is present over here, where the light reaction will where the process of light reaction will be carried forward. Now, to talk about each granum consists of 10 to 20 thylakoids. Now here is the overall reaction of photosynthesis. You all might have studied that six carbon dioxide and six H2O molecules give rise to a glucose plus six molecules of water and six molecules of H2O. But this is not the case. Why? We know that the carbon dioxide and water results in glucose and oxygen. Now, obviously, we know six molecules of carbon dioxide are needed. If you try with 6H2O to have enough hydrogen, then the equation would be 6CO2 and 6H2O, which would give rise to a glucose molecule and six oxygen molecules. But this is not the correct equation because it is giving us an impression that the oxygen is coming from the carbon dioxide, which it is not the case, as it was challenged and proved by Neil in 1931. All of it comes from the water. So let us add enough water, and adding another 6 molecule of water makes the equation 6CO2 plus 12H2O, giving rise to a glucose molecule plus 6 oxygen molecule and 6 water molecules. This being the correct equation of photosynthesis. Now, the source of molecular oxygen was water and not carbon dioxide, as was believed earlier, was experimentally proved by Robert Hill in 1937, and later it was confirmed by M.D. Kemen and S. Rubin in 1945. They employed a tracer technique in which heavy isotopes of oxygen 18 were used. This experimental proof was based on the suggestion of C.B. Van Leeuwen's work on bacterial photosynthesis in 1930 to 31. This was called as Van Leeuwen's theory of photolysis of water molecule. Now, tracking atoms through photosynthesis. So this is the diagram which will give you a picturesque view of the oxygen molecules coming from the photolysis of water, which you can see in the red arrow. Now coming on to the light harvesting complex or the quantasomes. Now what are these? Now quantasomes or the LHC. These are considered as the unit of photosynthesis, and these were identified Roderick B. Park. Now these quantasomes, these are the smallest group of pigment molecules which take part in conversion of solar energy into the chemical energy. It has got a reaction center, which is also called as photocenter, as well as trap center. Now, these reaction centers, they usually have a single chlorophyll A molecule, which is fed by the light harvesting pigments. Now, as you can see here in the diagram, the light harvesting complexes, it is made up of hundreds of pigment molecules bound to protein within the photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. Each photosystem, it will consist of all the pigment except for the one molecule of chlorophyll, which will distinguish photosystem 1 from photosystem 2. And this will forming a light harvesting system called antenna. Now these antenna molecules, it absorbs the light of shorter wavelengths only. Now, these pigments help to make the process of photosynthesis more efficient by absorbing different wavelengths of light. A single chlorophyll A molecule will only form the reaction center. The reaction center is different for both the photosystem. For photosystem 1, PS1, the chlorophyll has the absorption P of 700 nanometer, and that is why this photosystem is also called as P700. Now for the photosystem 2, the chlorophyll A has an absorption P at 680 nanometer, and this photosystem is also called as P680. Next, there is a division of labor between antenna and reaction center. Mechanism of photosynthesis. Now, what is the mechanism of photosynthesis? To begin with a very simple mechanism, that the photosynthesis is an oxidative reduction reaction where water is oxidized and carbon dioxide is reduced. The end product of photosynthesis being the uh, oxygen and water molecule, and the main product being the glucose molecule. The raw materials used for the photosynthesis are carbon dioxide and water molecule. And also, if we talk about the photosynthetic plants, the hydrogen donor is water, and source of oxygen is released is also from water. Now, these are the following events which occur during the process of photosynthesis. The first one is the absorption of light energy by the chlorophyll. The second one is the conversion of this light energy to the chemical energy, which is nothing but the ATP and NADPH2, and then the splitting of water molecules to hydrogen and oxygen, which is also called as photolysis of water. And finally, the reduction of carbon dioxide to carbohydrates, right? Now, in 1932, it was Robert Emerson and Arnold proposed that whole process of photosynthesis involves two distinct phases. They are photochemical phase and biosynthetic phase. Photochemical phase is the light-dependent light reaction which occurs in the grana of the chloroplast, and biosynthetic phase is the light-independent dark reaction which occurs in the stroma of the chloroplast. And there are usually three different types of dark reaction pathway in the plants, which are C3, C4, and CAM. Here we will discuss about C3 and C4 only due to the limitation of time. Now, going on to the first reaction, that is the light reaction, which is also called as the photochemical phase. Now, it is the photochemical reaction which occurs in the grana of the chloroplast, and this reaction takes place only in the chlorophyll A, which is nothing but the reaction center. Here the solar energy is trapped by the chlorophyll molecules, and these are stored in the form of chemical energy, assimilatory power, as ATP, and reducing power NADPH plus H plus. Now, NADPH plus H plus is the only reducing power. Now, the process of formation of this high energy chemicals, which is the ATP and NADPH in the presence of light, is called as photophosphorylation. Now, light reaction is discussed in two phases. First phase is the photooxidation phase, where the light energy is absorbed. Then this energy is transferred from accessory pigments to the reaction center, and then the chlorophyll A molecule gets activated, right? Next is the photochemical phase, where photolysis of water occurs and evolution of oxygen takes place. Electron transport and synthesis of high energy chemical intermediates, ATP and NADPH, also takes place in the photochemical phase. Now, talking about the photosystem. In 1935, Robert Emerson proved that two pigment systems are involved in light reaction. They are pigment system 1 or photosystem 1 and pigment system 2. Now, the reaction center and the light harvesting system, which is the accessory pigments, together forms the photosystem or pigment system. Now, about 250 to 450 pigment molecules constitute to form a single photosystem. And these photosystems, they are located in the thylakoid membrane of the plants as well as algae, or in the cytoplasmic membrane of photosynthetic bacteria. Now, these photosystems, these are the functional and structural unit constituting of protein complexes involved in the photosynthesis. Now, this was just a brief of the photosystem. Now, both photosystems, they are required for oxygenic photosynthesis. Now, the location of photosystem 2 is that it is located in the oppressed region of grana thylakoids. Here you can see the oppressed region. Now, these are the oppressed regions, as you all can see it over here. These are the oppressed regions of the thylakoid membrane, and photosystem 1 is found in the non-oppressed region, basically the exposed region of the grana and stroma thylakoid. These are the oppressed region, as you all can see, right? And these are the human. Yes. Next, uh, going on to the electron transport system, which is nothing but the non-cyclic photophosphorylation and cyclic photophosphorylation. Now, we all know that as soon as the light energy is absorbed, the electrons get excited. When they get excited, they move to the higher energy state, and but they come back, but they finally come back to the lower energy state. And while doing so, they release a certain energy, and this energy is utilized for the process of photosynthesis. Right now, we will study this part. Now, first of all, it's non-cyclic photophosphorylation. It is also termed as Z-skin because here the electron do not go back to the reaction center, but rather it is accepted by the NADP plus, and this looks like a letter Z. That is why it is called as Z-skin. Here, both the photosystem, that is photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, are involved, and the reaction center is the chlorophyll A680. Next, to begin with, here the photolysis of water uses up the electron and leads to the formation of ATP and NADPH. Here you can see, right, when photons get activated, reactions are activated, reaction centers of pigment system 2, which is 680, P680, electrons are moved to the higher energy level. Right. The electrons from high energy state passes through a series of electron carriers. In oxygenic species, non-cyclic electron transport takes place in 3 steps. First one is the electron transport from water to P680. Now here you can see over here, the first phase taking place over here. Now what happens over here? Splitting of water molecule produces electrons, protons, and oxygen, right? Now the electron lost by the photosystem 2, which is P680, are replaced by the electrons from splitting of water molecule. Right. The second step is the electron transport from P680 to 700. Okay, which is basically this process. Right. Now here, what happens over here? Electron flow starts from P680 through a series of electron carriers like fuchsine, plastoquinone, cytochrome B6F complex, plastocyanine, and finally it reaches the P700, photosystem 1. During this movement of electron from photosystem 2 to photosystem 1, ATP is generated. One of the important parts, ATP generation. Now, electron transport from P700 to NADP plus. Now, photosystem 1 or P700 is excited now by light. The electron pass to high energy level and are accepted by electron acceptor molecule, which is nothing but the ferredoxin reducing substances. When electrons travel downhill through ferredoxin, NADP plus is reduced to NADPH plus H plus, and H plus is formed from the photolysis of water molecule. This can be seen it over here. And this can be seen over here. Photosystem 1 getting the electron. This reaches the ferredoxin producing substances and then to ferredoxin and then to NADP plus converted to 2 NADPH plus H plus, a reducing power. Right, now photolysis of water. Now talking about the photolysis of water, P680 before going on to this, there are a few points which you should know for the non-cyclic photophosphorylation, and that is the electron released from photosystem 2 are not cycled back to photosystem 2. It is used for the reduction of NADP plus into NADPH plus H plus. Next, during this electron transport, there is generation of ATP, and hence this is the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. The electron flow looks like the appearance of letter Z, and whenever NADP plus is available and there is photolysis of water, both photosystem 1 and photosystem 2 gets activated. So the condition for photosystem 1 and photosystem 2 to get activated is that photolysis of water should take place, and apart from that, NADP plus has to be available. Now, going on to the photolysis of water. Now, P680, that is a photosystem 2, becomes a strong oxidizing agent and splits a molecule of water to release oxygen. This light-dependent splitting of water molecule is called as photolysis of water, or Van Mills theory of photolysis of water. Manganese, calcium, chloride ions plays important role in the photolysis of water. The photolysis of water in photosynthesis, it was first demonstrated by Robert Hill in 1937, and his work was based on Van Mills theory. Next, water is splitting into hydrogen, ion, oxygen, and electrons. Now, oxygen is one of the end products of photosynthesis. Going on to the cyclic photophosphorylation. In cyclic photophosphorylation, only photosystem 1 works, and it occurs in the thylakoid membrane, where the chlorophyll A700 is the reaction center. Now, when the photon activates P700 reaction center, that is chlorophyll A molecule absorbing wavelength of 700 nanometer wavelength, right? Photosystem 2 gets activated. Now, electrons are raised to higher energy level. Now, the primary acceptor is, as you can see it over here, ferredoxin reducing substrate. Now, this transfers electron to the ferredoxin, then to plastoquinone, then to cytochrome complexes, cytochrome B6F complexes, plastocyanine, and finally the electron reaches back to the chlorophyll P700, PS photosystem 1. Now, during this movement of electron, ADP is phosphorylated by the addition of inorganic phosphates, and there is the generation of ATP during the cyclic photophosphorylation. Now, cyclic electron transport produces only ATP, and there is no NADPH plus H plus and oxygen formation. This is one of the very important points, that during the cyclic electron transport, only ATP are produced and no reducing power has been generated, and also the oxygen is not formed. That is, we can conclude that here the photolysis of water is not taking place right now. This process produces proton motive forces, pumping H plus ion across the membrane, thereby generating a concentration gradient that can be used to power ADP synthesis during chemiosmosis. Now, chemiosmotic theory is beyond the scope of this webinar as due to the limitation of time. Now, NADP plus does not accept the electron. They are instead sent back to cytochrome B6F complexes. Now, photosystem 1, it needs light of longer wavelength. It operates only under low light intensities when carbon dioxide is less and under an aerobic condition, that is absence of light, which makes it considered as earlier in evolution, and it is mostly seen in bacteria. Now, there is a difference between cyclic, a few points regarding the difference between cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. For the cyclic photophosphorylation and non-cyclic photophosphorylation, cyclic, it takes place in photosystem 1, and for non-cyclic, photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, both are important. Now, Talking about the reaction center, for the cyclic, it's P700, and for non-cyclic, it's P680. Now, cyclic photophosphorylation, it takes place in photoautotropes, including in bacteria, and uh, non-cyclic photophosphorylation, it takes place in photoautotropes, excluding bacteria. Okay, now in cyclic photophosphorylation, electrons are cycled back to the photosystem one, whereas in non-cyclic, it is not cycled back. Here in cyclic photophosphorylation, no photolysis of water takes place, and hence there is no evolution of oxygen. Whereas in non-cyclic photophosphorylation, photolysis of water takes place, and as a result of which oxygen is evolved during this process. Only ATP is synthesized over here, and no NADPH plus H plus is synthesized during the cyclic phosphorylation, whereas in the non-cyclic phosphorylation, ATP as well as NADP H plus are synthesized. Now, photophosphorylation takes place at two places, whereas non-cyclic photophosphorylation, it takes place only in one places. Now, cyclic photophosphorylation is not sensitive to DCMU, dichlorophenyl dichlorophenyl dimethyl urea, and non-cyclic photophosphorylation, it is sensitive to DCMU, and it inhibits the electron flow. Now, dark reaction or the photosynthetic reaction. The second phase of photosynthesis is the dark reaction. Now, this reaction takes place in the stroma of the chloroplast, right? And this is the reaction where carbon dioxide is reduced to carbohydrates. Now, where are ATP and NADPH used? Now, ATP and NADPH, which was produced during the light reaction of photosynthesis, are now utilized by the dark reaction. Dark reaction, for the dark reaction to take place, light is not necessary. This dark reaction can take place at any time of the day without the requirement of light, but it do depend on the product of light reaction, which is ATP and NADPH. So in a way, we can say that the name dark reaction is a misnomer. They are used in biosynthetic pathway where carbon dioxide is reduced to carbohydrates. Now, alternative names are as follows: Calvin cycle, C3 cycle, photosynthetic carbon reduction cycle. In short, we can say PCR cycle, and reductive pentose pathway. Now, this process, as I've already told you, that it does not depend on the presence of light, but it depends on the product of light reaction, that is ADP and NADPH besides carbon dioxide and water. Now, the use of radioactive carbon-14 by Melvin Kelvin in algal photosynthesis studies led to the discovery that the first carbon dioxide fixation produced was a 3-carbon organic acid, which was PGA. Now, a 3-carbon molecule compound called phosphoglyceric acid, in short PGA, is the first stable compound formed during Kelvin cycle. Hence, this cycle is also called as C3 cycle. Or we can say that the plants in which the first stable compound formed is a 3-carbon molecule, which is phosphoglyceric acid, can be termed as C3 plants. Now, ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate, RUBP, it acts as the acceptor molecule of carbon dioxide, and it fixes the carbon dioxide by the enzyme Rubisco. Now, M. Melvin Kelvin, A. Benson, and their co-worker in the year 1957, they found this pathway of carbon fixation. Melvin Kelvin was even awarded Nobel Prize for this in 1961, and this pathway named after the discoverer as the Kelvin-Benson cycle. Now, dark reaction is temperature dependent, and so it is also called as thermochemical reaction. Now, Kelvin cycle is basically divided into 3 distinct stages. First one is the carbonization or fixation phase, where during which carbon dioxide combines with the RUBP, Next, reduction or glycolytic reversal cycle, during which carbohydrate is formed at the expense of the photochemically made ATP and NADPH. The third stage is the regeneration stage, during which the carbon dioxide acceptor RUBP is formed again. Okay, I repeat, during which the carbon dioxide acceptor, that is RUBP, is formed again so that the cycle continues. Now, to begin with the first stage, that is carbonylation phase. Now, the acceptor molecule, which is the RUBP, a 5-carbon compound, with the help of an enzyme called rubiscose, accepts one molecule of carbon dioxide, as you can see it over here. It would be easy if you learn it via the equations. So we see that the acceptor molecule, which is RUBP, a 5-carbon compound, with the help of enzyme rubisco, accepts one molecule of carbon dioxide and it forms an unstable 6-carbon compound, and this 6-carbon compound is broken down into 2 molecules of 3-carbon compound phosphoglyceric acid. Now, if 6 RUBP, 6 CO2 is required to form 12 molecules of PGA, and this we will discuss at the last, why we have to take 6 RUBP and 6 CO2. Right. So this was the first step. Going on to the second step, which is the reduction phase. Here you have to remember the 12 molecule of phosphoglyceric acid is formed at the end. Now, reduction phase. These are the series of reactions that led to the formation of glucose. Now, phosphoglyceric acid, it is reduced into glyceraldehyde phosphate by utilizing assimilatory power ATP and NADPH. So this is the stage, that is the reduction stage, which utilizes the product of light reaction, right? So reduction phase utilizes the product of light reaction, that is ATP and NADPH. Okay, now hydrogen from NADPH is added in this reaction. Now, phosphoglyceric acid is phosphorylated by ATP and produces 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid by PGA kinase. Here you can see that 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid is reduced to glycer. Okay, just a second. First of all, 12-phosphoglyceric acid in the presence of PGA kinase give rise to 12 molecules of 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid. Next, this 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid is reduced to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate using the reducing power, that is NADPH plus H plus. Now, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is converted into its isomeric form, dihydroxyacetone phosphate, which is DHAP. Right. Next, finally, the regeneration phase. This is the phase where RUBP is regenerated, and it involves the formation of several intermediate compounds of 6-carbon, 5-carbon, 4-carbon, and 7-carbon skeleton. Fixation of now. As I have told over here that why we are using 6 CO2 molecules, the reason being, now, fixation of 1 CO2 requires 3 ATP and 2 NADPH, right? So, 1 carbon dioxide fixation requires 3 ATP and 2 NADPH plus H plus. And for the fixation of 6 CO2 molecules, okay, it requires 6 into 3, that is 18 ATP, and 6 into 2, that is 12 NADPH plus H plus during C3 cycle. And 1 6-carbon compound is a net gain to form hexose sugar. Okay, so to form C6H12O6, we require 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, as we have seen in the tracking of the diagram where I have shown you how the molecules are tracked during the process of photosynthesis, right? So I hope the idea is very clear right now, why we require 6 CO2 over here, the last reaction in purple. and by 18 ATP and 12 NADPH. Now, of the 12 molecule, as we know over here that from 6 CO2 and 6 RUBP, 12 molecules of PGA are formed. Now the fate of this PGA. Now, of the 12 molecules of glyceraldehyde phosphate formed in the reduction stage, 10 molecules, these are obtained with 6 ATP molecules through a complex series of reaction, and it regenerates the RUBP, right? 6 CO2 plus 18 ATP plus 12 NADPH plus H plus gives C6H12O6 plus 6H2O plus 18 ADP plus 18 inorganic phosphate plus 12 NADPH. This is the overall complete reaction of photosynthesis where all the input and output have been given. Now the C3 cycle requires 18 ATP for the synthesis of one molecule of glucose. But of the 18 ATP, 6 ATP molecules are used in the regeneration of RUBP after the formation of one molecule of glucose in the Kelvin cycle. ATP and NADP plus required for the light reaction are regenerated. Now, this is the basic structure which I know now it will be very clear for you to understand. Right, so 6 carbon dioxide molecules required. It give rise to 3 phosphoglyceric acid, 12 molecules of 3 PGA, utilization of ATP, giving rise to 12 molecules of 1,3 bisphosphate, the second stage, and from this 12 molecule of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate are formed, and then these are utilized to form fructose 6-phosphate, and then it gets biosynthesized. Finally, 10 glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate molecules, the last stage, where they are used to produce the RUBP molecule again with the help of multiple enzymes. Now, here utilization of 6 ATP, with the utilization of 6 ATP, RUBP, ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate is regenerated, and the process of dark reaction continues. Now, going on to the C4 pathway, it is also known as Hatch and Slack pathway. Now, there are certain plants which, instead of forming 3 carbon molecule, which is PGA, they form 4 carbon molecule, which is oxaloacetic acid. Now, these plants are called as C4 pathway, and they use different pathway for the fixation of CO2. Right. Now, till 1965, Kelvin cycle was the only pathway for carbon dioxide fixation. A pathway for dark reaction in sugarcane and maize leaves were proposed by Hatch and Slack. It is the CO2 fixation in the tropical plants like maize, sugarcane, sorghum, pearl millets, amaranthus, etc. These are all the C4 plants. In this pathway, oxaloacetic acid is the first stable product formed, and it is a 4 carbon atom. Hence, this is called as C4 pathway. Hatch and Slack cycle is also an alternative name for it. Now, what is the speciality of this C4 plant? Why these C4 plants are special, and why this kind of process takes place? The reason being, they tolerate higher temperature and show a response of high light intensities. Okay, now they lack a process called photorespiration and have greater productivity of biomass. To explain photorespiration in a very simple way, I'll explain C3 and photorespiration as well. Now, we know that in the environment, both oxygen and carbon dioxide is produced. When the level of oxygen is more in the environment, photorespiration takes place because oxygen gets fixed. And when the level of carbon dioxide is more, then either carbon dioxide fixation can take place via C3 and C4 cycle, right? So it is, and apart from that, this C4 plants, it showed a special leaf anatomy, which is called as the Kranz anatomy. Now, what is this Kranz anatomy? Very important topic that uh, around the vascular bundle, there are certain large cells can be seen, and these are green bundle sheath, and these are present only in C4 plant, the leaves of C4 plants. Now, the bundle sheath, these bundle sheaths cells may form several layers around the vascular bundles, and they are characterized by having a large number of chloroplasts, thick walls, impervious to gaseous exchange, and there is no intercellular spaces, as you can see it over here. These are the bundle sheet, no intercellular spaces, large, impervious to for exchange of gases. Right now, one of the important thing is that PEPcase, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxylase enzyme, is present only in mesophyll cells, right? While the Rubisco is present only in the bundle sheath. That is, in the mesophyll cells, only PEPcase is present and Rubisco is absent. Now, though these plants have C4 oxaloacetic as the first CO2 fixation product, they use the C3 pathway, that is, which occurs in the bundle sheath or the Kenville cycle as the main biosynthetic pathway. That means here the reaction takes place in mesophyll cells and bundle sheath cells. In the mesophyll cells, peptidase enzyme is present, which fixes the which converts the carbon dioxide and into a certain products which enters into the bundle sheath, which gets again converted to carbon dioxide, and then the entire process of C3 cycle takes place in the bundle sheath. Now, in the C4 plants, the C3 cycle occurs in the bundle sheath while the C4 occurs in the mesophyll cells. Now, to explain the entire process, as you can see it over here, yeah, as you can see it over here, these are the mesophyll cells and these are the bundle sheath. In the mesophyll cells, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxylase is present, and in the bundle sheath, Rubisco is present. Now, what happens over here? This C4 cycle is covered, can be explained in two stages. Now, in the stage one, it occurs in the stroma of the mesophyll cells. We know that when the stromata opens, carbon dioxide and oxygen both can enter the mesophyll cells. Right? Now, but in the mesophyll cells of the C4 plants, only phosphoenol pyruvate carboxylase is present, which is insensitive to oxygen, and Rubisco is absent. Now, this phosphoenol pyruvate can fix only carbon dioxide and not oxygen, so oxygen leaves out of the cell. Now, initially carbon dioxide is taken up by phosphoenol pyruvate in the mesophyll cells and changed to oxaloacetic acid in the presence of phosphoenol pyruvate, this reaction, right? Now, oxaloacetic acid is reduced to malate that reaches into the bundle sheath. To give you a clear idea of this, yeah, here. This is the case where the PEP carboxylase fixes the carbon dioxide, and then oxaloacetic acid gets converted to malate or malic acid, and this malic acid then enters the bundle sheath, which is the stage 2, where this malic acid is reduced to carbon dioxide and pyruvate. Right. Now, explaining this step can be explained as follows. Now, bundle sheath of the cells, stage 2. Malic acid undergo decarboxylation and it produces the 3-carbon compound, which is a pyruvic acid and carbon dioxide. Then the released carbon dioxide, it combines with the RuBP and follows the Kelvin cycle. And finally, sugar is released to the phloem. Pyruvic acid is transported to the mesophyll cells. Okay, so this was the reaction which was explained right now. And in the bundle sheet, as soon as the malic acid dissociates into carbon dioxide and pyruvic acid, the CO2 follows the same pathway of Kelvin cycle and produces the sugar, which gets transferred to the vascular tissue. Right. Finally, the law of limiting factor. We all know what law of limiting factor is, right? No. If a chemical process is affected by more than one factor, then its rate will be determined by the factor which is nearest to its minimal value. It is a factor which directly affects the process if its quantity is changed. For example, if we take, there is the presence of green leaf, optimum light, carbon dioxide is perfect, but still the process of photosynthesis is not taking place in the plant. What is the reason? The reason being the temperature, because the temperature is very low. Now for this leaf, if given the optimal temperature, the photosynthesis will start performing. So here we can say that temperature is the limiting factor. What are the factors affecting the photosynthesis? Now, first we can say that light, the rate of photosynthesis increases at low light intensities. At high intensities of light, beyond a point, the rate of carbon dioxide fixation will decrease. Right? Longer hours of light duration favors more photosynthetic rates. Next, carbon dioxide, it increases in carbon dioxide concentration. Increase in carbon dioxide concentration causes increase in CO2 fixation. It is the major limiting factor of photosynthesis. Okay, so more the CO2 concentration, more CO2 fixation, and more the rate of photosynthesis would be. Temperature. The rate of temperature at optimum temperature is high. It is usually 20 to 25 degrees Celsius and for C3 plants and 30 to 35 degrees Celsius for C4 plants. Next is the water. Water is one of the reactants in photosynthesis, but it affects the rate of photosynthesis, that is the carbon dioxide fixation. Low water content causes the stomata to get close, that is the stomata become plastic, they get shrink, and the carbon dioxide availability is reduced, and hence the rate of photosynthesis decreases. This was all about photosynthesis. Thank you so much. For further information, you can send any inquiries to the email ID provided over here. Or you can even send the inquiries to the email ID provided below. Thank you so much. And all the best for your NEET examination. Thank you so much.